Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. As tensions simmer across the Middle East and Europe rethinks its defense priorities, Turkey is quietly redrawing its own playbook. In a major step to upgrade its aging air force, Ankara has signed a preliminary deal with the UK for Eurofighter Typhoons. If finalized, the deal could bring Turkey back into the high-end fighter game. But the road won't be easy. Israel's opposition is reportedly lobbying Berlin to block the sale, citing Ankara's stance on Gaza. For nearly a decade, Turkey has pushed to modernize its air force, but it's been a bumpy flight. First came its expulsion from the US-led F-35 program over the Russian S-400 purchase. Then long-stalled talks with Washington over F-16 upgrades left Ankara searching for alternatives. And now Israel could be looking to ground Turkey's latest deal with the UK. Opposition leader Yair Lapid lashed out at Prime Minister Netanyahu this week, blaming him for failing to block the Eurofighter sale. The aircraft developed jointly by the UK, Germany, Italy, and Spain are considered among the most advanced fourth-plus generation fighter jets in the world. For more, joining me now from London is Loughborough University visiting fellow Afzal Ashraf. From Istanbul, Turkish National Defense University professor Mehmet Özkan, and from Budapest, the John Lukács Institute for Strategy and Politics Research Fellow, Zoltan Egeresi. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about fighter jets, one of my favorite topics. Now, Turkey has been on quite a long journey trying to lock in that procurement. It was the F-35 for a while. That didn't happen. Modernizing F-16s, that didn't happen. Now it looks like the Eurofighter Typhoon has been the choice for Turkey. Afzal, what are your thoughts? Did Turkey make the right decision?
Well, I think it has. The push for the Eurofighter is driven by the need to modernize Turkey's air force after delays that you've listed. You know, the inability to get the F-35 and the delays with the F-16 upgrade, which point to a very deep and increasingly concerning issue for a lot of nations where the US is getting increasingly overt about its political linkage with weapons, which it's always been there. You know, it's been there ever since the 1940s and 50s, even with its closest allies like the UK. But now it's got to a stage where you are almost subservient if you align yourself with American procurement. So you're politically subservient. And there's one thing else that I think is important that doesn't really appear in this debate, and that is what I would describe as software sovereignty. And what that simply means is that any weapon system, whether it's a missile, aircraft, ship, tank even, which contains software made by a foreign nation, allows that foreign nation to limit and control to some degree the use of those weapon systems across boundaries, geographical boundaries, across particular types of other weapon systems and enemies. So I think it's really important that Turkey is continuing on its program of sovereign independence when it comes to defense.
Mm-hmm. So, Mehmet, it's no surprise that Turkey was shopping for a new fighter jet. I mean, obviously, an aging fleet. Does the Eurofighter meet Turkey's needs?
Yes, but we should contextualize the Eurofighter into three domains. First, as you know, there were discussions whether Turkey is leaving the West. And now with this purchase, I think Turkey is showing itself that Turkey is part and parcel of the Western system. That's the first one. And second, we have seen the 25th of June when NATO leaders get together in Hague. There was in the communique they said very clearly that they will eliminate the defense trade barriers among allies. That's also part and result of this NATO meeting that enforced Turkey's increasing role and important role in NATO. And of course, thirdly, Turkish Air Force has been transforming since 15th of July, since military coup attempt. Now, I think its capacity will increase with Eurofighters. In the meantime, while Turkey is waiting for the Khan and other self-products, fighter jets, I think it will be extremely useful, extremely important for Turkey, as we see region is in turmoil, is potential conflicts may rise. So in that sense, Turkey is buying these things. It's extremely important and critical and very timely.
Mm-hmm. Zoltan, is the Eurofighter Typhoon a consolation prize when you compare it to the F-35? I mean, was it the best that Turkey had to choose from with the F-35 on the side being unattainable, or does the Eurofighter maybe a little more sturdy, a little more proven? Was that a better choice?
Yeah, I think it was a really important deal, or it's a really important step towards strengthening the Turkish Air Force, because it's available and Eurofighters are quite developed planes for the Turkish and, let's say, geopolitical needs. So from this respect, it was a feasible choice. On the other hand, Turkey could send a really important message to other possible providers, especially to the United States, because Turkey during the last years was also again in talks concerning F-16s with the United States. So it clearly pointed out that there are other options. On the other hand, relying and building a more stable European connection in military fields, especially in defense industry, will also prove Turkey a really important partner for the Turkish, really important European countries. And on the longer run, in the upcoming years, what we could see during the recent changes in NATO, military spending, and really important message from the United States. So altogether, these kind of changes will cement and increase Turkey's relevance for European partners, and by having this kind of cooperation, of course, enforcing and reinforcing the Turkish Air Force can later on lead to other military cooperation and defense cooperation with other countries or with these European countries.
Mm-hmm. So, Afzal, it's been about 4 decades the Turkish Air Force has been working with F-16, so they know the F-16 very well. The Turkish defense industry has basically fanned out around the F-16 to provide a lot of complementary upgrades, maintenance, and whatnot. And this has been built over the years. How quickly can Turkish fighter pilots and the Turkish defense industry embrace the Eurofighter Typhoon and create that support system for it?
Well, it's not a quick thing, but it's not impossible either. So lots of air forces have already converted. As you know, the Royal Air Force, the British Air Force, operates the Eurofighter Typhoon, and even though it didn't have the F-16, which was a slightly more advanced fighter than the Tornado F-3, which largely preceded the Eurofighter. Similarly, other countries like Germany, like Spain, like Italy, have adopted this new aircraft very much more easily. And the reason for that is that the F-16, as you pointed out, is a very old aircraft, 4 decades or so old, even though there have been lots of upgrades avionics-wise. The design specification for the Eurofighter is to make it much easier to fly and also much easier to maintain and operate. So those advantages allow for a swifter conversion onto the Typhoon than was the case in the older aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Mehmet, earlier, Afzal said that the Eurofighter was a political decision, that the Turks were concerned about the strings attached and the changing position of the Americans regarding a fighter jet sale. Do you agree with him that this was a political decision, and is it smart for Turkey to diversify its procurement like this?
I think first of all, of course, it's a good decision to diversify its option. And second, I think the West is normalizing relation with Turkey now. everybody's talking about whether Turkey's normalized relation with the West, but I think with the Eurofighter Typhoons selling to Turkey, West is, especially Europe, is normalizing its relation with Turkey. And probably after that, we will see either F-35 or F-16 renovation from the United States that will also normalize the relation between Turkey and the United States. Now, in last 2 years, what we have seen, I mean, Turkey is now becoming part of the Western system again, to NATO and other institutions. That's extremely clear, because in the in last 10 years, we have seen lots of ups and downs in terms of Western approach to Turkey. Now that has changed. And this, of course, as a result, it's a political decision. We should read as in this context. And at the same time, it's a new era, new normal era in terms of Turkey and Western relations, both with the European side and the American side. Probably that will be coming after this, which there is a process, whether F-16 renovations or a possibility of Turkey joining to F-35.
Zoltan, assuming that this deal is finalized and Turkey does receive its Typhoons in the coming years, how would that revamped Turkish Air Force rank according to countries in the region?
So if everything goes fine according to the plans, Turkey will get 40 extra fighter jets, and it will really increase its air force compared to its neighbors. Turkish military force and air force is comparatively strong. If you look at into comparison, Greece or other countries, especially the smaller ones in the European side or in the Middle East neighborhood. However, there are, based on the current geopolitical tensions, there are still really strong players in the region, especially Israel. But all in all, this kind of development will put the Turkish Air Force in a much capable position. And especially if we take into consideration the internal domestic defense industry and developments, which are ongoing, the Turkish Air Force, if it will become able to mass production of its own new generation airplanes, it will be much stronger than now, and it will be one of the most potent actor in the Middle East in terms of air force and military capabilities.
Afzal, is the Turkish Air Force viewing this acquisition as a stopgap or an upgrade? And also, after this acquisition, are the F-35s off the table now? Do you think the Turkish Air Force won't pursue the F-35 or the F-16 modernization, or this will be complementary to any acquisition from the Americans?
Well, it's certainly being presented as a stopgap, but a stopgap for Turkey's own stealth fighter. And I think Turkey is also signaling to the United States and to its European partners that if you don't give us the requirements that we have in terms of Eurofighter or the F-35, we're developing our own. It's gone from, I think some figures suggest Turkey's gone from dependence of almost 100% to only 20% on foreign industries, foreign powers for weapon systems. Is developing its own capability, which is quite impressive. And all the indications are that it will produce something that is, if not equivalent, might in some cases surpass the F-35. The F-35 is rightly, if you like, pursued by people because it's the best in class, but it's not a perfect solution. It's not a solution that has been tested in aggressive combat. It's certainly a very expensive solution. There are some problems with it that people are grappling with. So who's to say that Turkey's stealth fighter, whenever it comes online in the future, won't be at least as good? And of course, what isn't talked about, and I think quite rightly isn't talked about by Turkey, is that it does have options from other sources. Turkey, as you know, in the past, and I think we've discussed this in the past, has bought surface-to-air missile, air defense systems from Russians. And of course, that caused a great deal of anxiety amongst NATO partners, including the United States. And it has the emerging and very impressive market in China to choose from, which was demonstrated very effectively against the Rafale that's operated by the Greeks, one potential rival of Turkey. that Rafale aircraft was down by, I think, an aircraft that is about the quarter of the price of a Rafale, with missiles that are probably even less in comparison with the Western equivalent. So the whole defense technology field is completely different from what it was even 10, 20 years ago, and no longer can the United States and even European powers claim, if you like, almost like a monopoly. And one thing they cannot afford to do is to put very difficult political, commercial, and other conditions on future buyers, including NATO partners.
Mehmet, does this acquisition make the Turks feel a little more comfortable and probably, or quite possibly, slow track the development of their fifth generation Khan fighter or their unmanned fighter jet, the Kızılelma?
Solve the temporary issue that Turkish Air Force will be powerful, but at the same time, that will confirm again that Turkey will, will accelerate its own production of Khan, Kızılelma, and all the other things, because Turkey knows the experience that buying this stuff, acquisition of this stuff from the West, from different countries, is not an easy way. It has lots of obstacles, it has lots of difficulties, and I think that will motivate Turkey extra to go further and to finish that process up. Then Turkey can take its place as one of the producer of this type of aircraft. I think that will work, temporarily that work positively, but at the same time, it will motivate Turkey further to continue to finish up the Khan and to bring to the market possibly after 2028.
So Zoltan, when the procurement of the Typhoon was on the agenda, now nearing the finalization of a deal, there's some opposition coming from regional actors. The Israelis don't want to see their military edge lost to Ankara. The Greeks also have been raising some opposition and concerns as well. Do you think this deal could be sidelined with lobbying efforts?
It's very difficult to predict, but probably not. Turkish importance, military geopolitical importance, is augmenting for European partners, as four big important European countries are behind fighter projects like Germany, UK, Spain, and Italy. And Turkey has managed to create really good relations, especially with Italy and Spain, recently with the United Kingdom as well. And even during the previous years, Turkish diplomacy managed to build a kind of fair relation with Germany, despite due to domestic political reasons, there were from time to time many criticism in Germany towards Turkey, but seemingly in the new geopolitical setup stemming from the war in Ukraine, stemming from the new president in the United States and his new vision about fellow NATO members' military expenditure, Turkish importance, as I mentioned, is augmenting. And these kind of European countries have to count on Turkey. That's why I do not think that on the longer run there will be a really important hindrance success concerning Eurofighter project, but we will see. Of course, several countries in the Turkish neighborhood, especially Greece, is quite upset due to the possibly changing in the military balance in the Aegean region. And the other really important actor from this respect is Israel, with which the Turkish diplomatic relation has become really tense during the last 2 years. And we do not see that there will be any big change in the upcoming future. And more Israel is perceiving the Turkish endeavor as a kind of threat. And in line with that, during the last 1.5 year, Turkish position in the Middle East, let's say in the Israeli neighborhood, has become much more crucial. So we can count on that upcoming future there will be a strong opposition from the Israeli side, but it's a big question, and I do not think that there will be an ultimate success concerning hindering the Turkish military purchases.
Afzal, I want to take a step back and look at it from a bigger picture, not just Turkey, but NATO. This acquisition, how important is it for NATO's southeastern flank for Turkey to modernize its air force?
Well, it's very important. Turkey has on its borders Russia, which is a potential NATO adversary, although Turkey has very good relationships on the whole with Russia. Um, and what it does do is maintain that edge which Turkey has lost because of the F-35 the F-16 rather not being upgraded, the F-35 not being purchased in time. So it is an important stopgap to maintain that technology, that operational and air power edge that Turkey has in order to strengthen the flank. Now, as already mentioned, Turkey has traditionally been the major power in that arena, although of course, Greece provides a very important and meaningful contribution in relation to Turkey. It isn't quite as potent in terms of its military capability, in terms of its air defense capability. It's not quite so potent. So it is a very important thing from NATO's perspective. The problem, of course, here, as has been pointed out, Turkey, like all the other nations within NATO, has both a NATO commitment and a national commitment, a national defense commitment. And its national defense commitment extends to NATO partners, or it might take into account NATO partners such as Greece. And that's one of the areas that I think this deal for 40 Eurofighters, certainly according to some reports, has meant that Turkey has already agreed not to use Eurofighter aircraft against other NATO forces. And indeed, as has been very briefly discussed, there is this issue with Israel. The Israeli lobby has used Germany, but reports indicate that Germans have now withdrawn their opposition to the deal, and that's why this deal of 40 aircrafts is on the table. But of course, we don't know how things will pan out in the future. But I think most people recognize that it's better for Turkey to get these aircraft than to deny Turkey access to European air power technology.
Mehmet, when we look over the past couple of years, we're seeing growing cooperation between Turkish and European firms. There was the acquisition of Italian Piaggio by Baykar. There's a lot of cooperation with Leonardo, cooperation with UK firms as well regarding the Khan going forward. Do you see this acquisition of the Eurofighter Typhoon opening the door for further Turkish-European cooperation?
I think yes, because I mean that's very much in line with the NATO communique. If June 2025, it was clearly it was saying that clearly that it should allies should promote defense industrial cooperation between themselves. So it's part of it. At the same time, when Turkey is buying Eurofighter, again, I mean also other type of cooperation will continue because now Turkey is very clearly observing this NATO transatlantic divide as well. Many people are talking about the possible European army, whether Europe can stand up itself. As a possible, if there is a possible divide in the future. So Europe now considers Turkey as part and parcel of European security as well. That's why I expect in coming years, security cooperation, defense cooperation between Turkey and European countries will increase and will deepen and will diversify. That's what we will see. In line with also Turkey, as part of its commitment to NATO and other its allies, Turkey will continue to cooperate and also to try to deepen relations with the United States. So Turkey is playing with this two field, and at the same time, Turkey is focusing a lot on its homegrown defense industry, which is extremely important. And Europeans are recognizing this, and Europeans are seeing as part of also contributing to European defense industries. I think I expect a better cooperation, meaningful cooperation in future, because in last 10 years there were some political issues that both sides were looking at each other. But now I think time has come for possible cooperation because there are lots of security challenges both in Eastern Europe and the Middle East and different places.
Zoltan, if this Typhoon sale didn't happen, would Turkey have looked east for a stopgap solution, or would it have continued with its domestic production? I mean, when I mean east, a Chinese fighter jet, a Russian fighter jet, Pakistani, maybe Korean. And would that have taken Turkey out of the Western orbit?
I think for Turkey, Eastern option is a trickier issue because it will really weaken its Western commitment that we could see after the purchase of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. A different level, Turkey could have faced different difficulties from its Western allies, especially from the part of the United States. So in this respect, it's much better for Turkey, and this is what we can see since decades, that Turkey is rather invested in its own production.
Afzal, Mehmet, Zoltan, thanks for helping me navigate this issue. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.